Back at it, ready to roll here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, a Kansas City Chiefs football podcast with you as always from NFL Network, NFL.com, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager from SumerSports.com. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. You can see my work at 810WHB.com. Exciting times headed into the bye week. What's not to love about getting a big win, going over 40 points on the road against San Francisco, and then shutting it down for a week of rest. You know, the Chiefs had a happy plane ride home from San Francisco. However, today we find out, at least as we tape today on a Tuesday, Frank Clark will be suspended for 2 games. We'll talk about what that means for the Chiefs. What are the Chiefs as they reach the bye week? Several wins by 40 points, a couple of close calls, couple of losses. Where do we think this team is headed? Did the 49ers teach us anything new about the Chiefs? Did Isiah Pacheco answer all the questions in the Chiefs running game? Oh, I know we can't wait to talk to Eric Eager about some Isiah Pacheco. Offensive line, did it improve or did the coaches just game plan better? Is JuJu Smith-Schuster a number 1 receiver? 5 sacks for the boys in red in San Francisco. Where is the confidence in the pass rush now? Should the Chiefs be interested in Odell Beckham Jr.? Do they have a trade they need to make? We'll try to get to it all here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. But, Jeff, let's start with Frank Clark. The news that after he has his best game of the season, that he will be suspended. We have, after he has his best game of the season, he gets a 2-game suspension. What do we think?
Well, I think we shouldn't be surprised. I mean, we knew that he'd had felony gun charges in California. We knew they'd been resolved a few months ago, and we knew the NFL doesn't take lightly on these kind of situations. And so Willie Gay got his 4-game suspension for what happened back in last January. It's time for Frank Clark to pay the piper. And so, yeah, it is ironic that he actually showed up and had a big play in a game, that it has to go down like this. But it was going to happen sooner or later. This was a big reason probably why Carlos Dunlap is on this team for this moment. And it's probably better that it happens at this point in the season than later. So I think if there's a positive for the Chiefs, is that it is getting out of the way at a time when they're not into the heavier part of their schedule. But again, it's one more chapter in the Frank Clark saga that is probably soon to end after this year.
Yeah. How about it, Eric? That was his best game as a Kansas City Chief this year, was it not?
Yeah, I mean, I think the funny part is a lot of people are like, oh, Frank Clark is having a great season, and like, oh, he's the best pure edge rusher on the Chiefs. It's like, guys, like before this game, Frank Clark wasn't doing much of anything, right? So, he did great, and obviously, I think we all grade on a curve because he did it against Trent Williams, one of the best left tackles in football. Williams coming off of an injury, so it clearly hurts the Chiefs. Obviously, you can't afford an injury now. To the Michael Danas of the world, to the Carlos Dunlaps of the world, and so on, and George Karlaftis as well. But it's against the Titans and the Jags. Like, so you're gonna the Titans. I don't know how they win games, but they're banged up on the offensive line. No Taylor Lewan and so on. So it shouldn't hurt there. And the Jaguars are one of the healthier teams in the NFL, but obviously not great on the offensive line either. So I think, it was probably the best time for the Chiefs for him to go out. But I don't think it has that big of an impact.
And by the way, I will let people know, I saw somebody say, hey, my screen is black, and they must be watching on Facebook. So if you're catching us via the podcast, we do stream live here each and every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Central. And we go out on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of these platforms. So if you follow me, if you're not getting the picture right now, follow me at Soren Petro or Eric at Eric Eager _ or at Jeffrey Chadiha. We tweet out the links. You can link to us on the YouTube page, subscribe there, and you can get it. So I apologize. I don't know why, but my Facebook is not working either. So I'm not going to bother to tweet out a link to something that says, sorry, we're having trouble playing this video. I can tell you it's not on our end, because if anybody on YouTube wants to give us a thumbs up, let me know. You're seeing us fine on YouTube. Facebook, I see frozen screen. So I apologize if you grab us on the YouTube, head over there. So I'll put a tweet out about that. But, as far as Frank Clark goes, it is, it is disappointing because we see what he can do and what this defensive line, 5 sacks. They're now tied for 7th in the league in sacks. We see what this defense can do when you have, a legitimate edge rush, which he was giving them against Trent Williams. Jeff, I mean, and that's what you're hoping for at this point, right? You said, hey, it's probably going to end at the end of this year. Yes, the consistency's not there. But if he brings it on a game, if this would have been the Super Bowl, Frank Clark goes down as the most, perfectly timed guy ever, in the history of mankind, having a great playoff run his first year and then coming up big. What you need is for him to do well, when the games are the biggest.
Yeah, count me as skeptical of him seeing the best of Trent Williams on Sunday. I'm assuming with that high ankle sprain, he got out there and did the best he could. But I have a hard time believing that in any world, Frank Clark is just blowing by Trent Williams, a healthy Trent Williams, and the way he blew by him in that moment. So he took advantage. He looked great doing it. But I'm not going to say this as a sign of more things to come from him, just because the sample size is large in the other direction. We'll put it that way. I think that he's had his moments during championship year, but for the most part, he has been an underwhelming player, and I think that will continue once they come back from the suspension.
Yeah, his career trajectory very similar to like Sammy Watkins in Kansas City, right? Yeah. Where he has kind of this J.D. Drew, big dollar, big plays in big moments, but for the most part, you can't rely on him. Again, it's why they went out and got Karlaftis in the first round. I really like what they're doing, and we'll talk about this later, but having Karlaftis play nose tackle on late downs and having Chris Jones rush from the edge has really been an added spark to this defense. And I think Clark, was a beneficiary of those two men doing their job along with Dunlap, who has his, back to his Mike Zimmer days, has, a lot of inside outside flexibility. I think, hopefully one of these younger guys, maybe Joshua Kane-Doe, a 4th round pick a season ago, can be active and actually make a play or two this week.
Yeah. And listen, it takes a village, but to get a pass rush, it takes everybody. But Chris Jones is no joke. I mean, that's one thing. I mean,
he's legit.
This is the kind of season you have when you want a contract extension. I mean, that's he's got another year after this, but veterans don't like to go into that year, and you couldn't play much better than he's playing right now, right, Jeff? I mean, that's him wrecking things inside. It also makes everything easier for everybody else.
Well, he's always been the key. I mean, he's the one that's going to be, you look at the way Quinnen Williams played for the Jets. You look at what Aaron Donald does for the Rams, what Micah Parsons brings to Dallas. He's the guy who's got to make it go. And so, when he's playing at a high level, and he's had moments where he's, hadn't got that kind of pressure that he got on Sunday, it's tough to deal with all those guys. He makes everybody better when he's playing at that level. And so, it is an interesting proposition as to how they treat him moving into the next contract discussion. He's going to be 29 when this contract's up. So you're talking about betting on him being at this level for another 4 years beyond that, I'm assuming 3 to 4 years, which is a tough bet for a guy who plays inside. But you can't argue the fact that he's been playing at a very high level this year, even against the run sometimes. That's always been the knock on him, that he's not a great run defender. In fact, it was funny when I was in New York last week doing a thing on Quinnen Williams, and I brought up the fact that Quinnen Williams trained with Chris Jones in the offseason, wanted to pick his brain about being a great player. And one of the people at the Jets said, hey, hold on a second. Just so we're clear about this, Quinnen Williams works a lot harder than Chris Jones does. It's just made a point of saying it. He's like, I know Bob. This guy said, I know Bob Sutton. I know what I've heard. You look at the tape, Chris Jones is not the same worker as Quinnen Williams. So that's still a knock out there against him, but he is playing at a high level regardless.
Well, I think what's really interesting is you saw what Chris Jones is explicitly on Sunday, right? Like the first few drives of that game, the Niners were just bleeding out the Chiefs on defense just over and over and over again, explosive play after explosive play. And Chris Jones, his value to the team was seen, right? It took one negative play to put the Niners in field goal range on a 4th and forever. You kick a field goal, and then the rest of the game, the Niners were trading 7s on the Chiefs side with 3s on their side. And that's exactly what Chris Jones is to this team, right? He's not a consistent, Well, and he has been. The folks asking me where he's grading at PFF, folks, I don't work at PFF anymore. I don't look at the grades every single day, but I do know that he is number one.
I don't know that you did even when you were at PFF.
Yeah, I mean, I formed my own opinions at times, but like but Jones is exactly what the Chiefs don't need their defense to be the 91 Eagles or the 02 Bucks or something. They need their defense to make a play or two every single game, right? They need their defense to hold the other team to 3. They need a turnover or 2. And Chris Jones is almost that perfect player, right? Where he bats a ball down at the line of scrimmage in the Super Bowl. He gets a sack the other day. And, that makes up for, in my estimation on this team, for the fact that consistently he's not a great down-to-down player sometimes.
I think this is a highly intelligent comment. New Yorkers think their doo-doo don't stink either. So, listen, I will say this, and we'll get to it on Too Deep. The Jets and Giants people, I'm still going to tell you need to enjoy this, right? Enjoy it. Because the Kansas City Chiefs are a team that has been there and done that, 4 straight conference championships. This is no smoke and mirrors act when they get out to 5-2. But I am curious because the pass rush overall, like I said, is 7th in the NFL, Jeff. They're on pace for 46 sacks on the year, which would be a giant increase. This is one big game, and they clearly do better against quarterbacks that are less mobile. But Jimmy Garoppolo is not Tom Brady, right? He'll move a little bit, but this they played into their hands. I think you have to give, and I'm with you. I don't think Trent Williams was 100%. I don't think he gets beat like that on a regular basis with Frank Clark. But you know what? This is why I think the Chiefs bowed out on Trent Williams, and we'll get to the offensive line in a second. But just in reference to this, I mean, he's getting old, right? That's a lot of money to tie up in a guy. And when you're older, you get hurt more. So yeah, he was hurt, but that's what you expect out of him. And sometimes that's what's going at you. Frank Clark can only rush against the guys that are there. But I am like 7th in the NFL is no joke. Like, is the pass rush now a strength and not a weakness? Because it's been a weakness for at least 2 seasons.
I think it is. Look, I think if you really want to get nuanced about it, and you just made the point, I think the pass rush is good when the quarterbacks aren't mobile. When the quarterbacks are mobile, the pass rush isn't as good. And I think it's as simple as that. When it's Josh Allen on the other side, it's a lot harder to get him down. When it's Jimmy Garoppolo, when it's Matt Ryan, I looked it up. Like 13, I think 2/3 of their sacks have come in 3 games, and I think 1/3 of those have come from players who aren't playing down lineman positions. And so Nick Bolton's got 3, 2.5 or 3. L'Jarius Sneed's got a couple, and so yeah, the numbers look great. But again, for me, the eye test is that can you rely on that pass rush when you need to have it? And is it putting less pressure on the back end? And so I think there are good components there, and they're certainly playing much better defense at this time of year than they have been in years past. But I thought going into this year, a lot of their pass rush would come off pressure, and I think that has been proven. So I think when they get to a place where you're saying, hey, those front 4 guys can handle it by themselves, which I think is the ideal place for this defense, I think then you're going to a different level with it.
I will highlight this for everyone. Says Jeff Stop. CJ is surrounded by Jags and still dominant. Well, what? Wait a minute. I can't even connect where that like.
I think they're commenting on when he said that he doesn't work as hard as Quinn and Williams. Which guys, folks,
well, that wasn't Jeff's.
Like that is well documented. Boys. Like that is that we're not breaking any new ground there.
Yeah.
The comment also on the Chiefs bowing out of Trent Williams, that is absolutely true. They did not go all the way to the Niners number there. I think Jeff, though, hit on a very good point, right? This team is doing what they're doing. And I know Fenton's not going to start when he comes back, but he was a starter before he got hurt. Trent McDuffie is a starter for this team. You've had players miss time in the secondary, and yet, the moves, and we're going to talk wide receivers, I think, but the move to get deeper and more athletic on the defense has had cascading effects. You can blitz Nick Bolton, Leo Chenal, Willie Gay, Darius Harris, L'Jarius Sneed. Somebody was talking shit to me today about Derek Brown. L'Jarius Sneed has more sacks than Derek Brown has in his career. L'Jarius Sneed's a threat off the edge. you can bring those guys on blitzes and stuff like that because your corners are an absolute disaster the way they've been in the past. And I think that is a testament to the holistic approach that this team has undergone. They've had starters miss time, and they're able to still dial up a defense that not great, but hasn't been a nightmare at all at any point this season. And actually in the second half of that game came up pretty big against the Niners.
Yeah. Look, I'll say this. Tim Grunhard said it a lot. Like, defensive linemen can't bring it on every down. Bill Self said it about, as a bouquet, he had, his big, several years ago at 7 foot, 280-pound center. He's like, it takes a lot of energy for him to get up and down the floor. And it does. And you're not, listen, maybe Quinnen Williams does outwork him, but nobody that's 6'6" and 300 pounds runs around like Tyreek Hill. It just doesn't happen. There are plenty of plays you watch. I think the narrative is set there on Chris Jones, and he's earned it, right? We would all agree. There are probably some plays that he could have brought it that he hasn't. I'm not going to tell you he's at full tilt all the time, but you watch a Rams game and watch the whole game, and Aaron Donald his hair is not on fire on every snap. There's sometimes that he gives it a move, and he's like, okay, I'm not going to get there. Now I'm going to play contain. And he just sits there and, manipulates the offensive tackle. That's part of how it works. So I think people are hypercritical. I think people look for reasons to defend their own, agenda, their own statements in the past. Like, I said, Chris Jones wasn't that good. Look on this play. He's not balls to the wall after the quarterback. None of them are. I mean, he is a tremendous football player.
Yeah. Micah Parsons may be that guy. He seems to be balls to the wall every play.
Micah Parsons is Lawrence Taylor minus the cocaine. Like, that is that we have to start acknowledging that fact. There's a reason everybody thought Mike McCarthy was a boob, and the guy's 17-7 and basically like 70% against the spread the last 2 years, and that's number 11 for his team.
Wow. Yeah. But Eric made the right point about the defense that shouldn't be lost in all this other stuff we're talking about, is that they just need to show up when they're needed. That happened against the Chargers, happened against the Raiders. And really, this as much as we're going to do this every week, obviously we love talking about the Chiefs and having these conversations. They're going to be defined by 2 games this season, the Bills and the Bengals. Those are the 2 toughest teams in the AFC aside from them. Those are the teams that can give them the toughest time in the postseason. Maybe somebody else emerges from that pack of the Dolphins, and if the Chargers can get healthy, if whoever the Jets may be the real thing in the playoffs, Tennessee. But we all know that the Bengals were the AFC champions. Bills are supposed to win the Super Bowl this year. That's who the Chiefs have to deal with in the postseason at some point.
I want to hit on this because I think this is an interesting point. And, Ben says it's hard to complain after this win. The real problem moving forward is that Veach has been a subpar drafter. Chris Jones is a beast, but they have not put any other defensive lineman around him. First of all, I think everybody's opinion of whether or not you can draft is based upon how their team is doing, and their knowledge of the draft is their team. I would encourage you to go look. You can look on Pro Football Reference and click on any team and see their whole history of drafting. And you find me the one where for 2 years, forget about 4 or 5 years in a row, 2 consecutive years where they hit on more than 50% of their draft picks. Like, that's not how it works. You are not living in the real world. What I would say to you is he has drafted. We will see what Trent McDuffie is, right? But they have drafted L'Jarius Sneed in the 4th round, Willie Gay in the 2nd round, Nick Bolton,
Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith.
Well, I'm just talking about the defense, but yes, there are plenty of really good draft picks on this team. But there's also, and we're going to talk about JuJu Smith-Schuster in a little bit, there are moves that go beyond it, because you're not going to fill your roster with just draft picks. You don't have enough picks to do it. And the other thing I would say is Brett Veach has been picking only in the bottom 20s. We did a breakdown of, we took just Eric's old spot, because until he provides me something different, the grades at Pro Football Focus. We took the top 16 players at wide receiver, at defensive end, and at offensive tackle, just the grades right now, and looked at where they were drafted. And wide receiver, actually, you have the most variance of being able to get somebody later on in the draft. There are more 2nd and 3rd rounders that are difference makers from there, but largely well more than like the median spot for top 16 left tackles was like number 12, meaning they're almost all first-round picks. Edge rushers, it's like number 9.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're picking 27, 28, 29, sitting there and tapping your fingers on the desk as to why you haven't drafted, the NFL sack leader. Yes, I'm aware TJ Watt went bottom of the first round. There are exceptions, but overwhelmingly 25 to 32 is no man's land in the draft.
Well, it's not even that, Soren. It's actually, the number, 2011's when the new CBA came out. The hit rates for basically like picks 20 to 32 have declined, in terms of like who gets the second contract or even like the 5th-year option exercise. It's gone down substantially. And part of that is money. Like somebody like Josh Jacobs is actually a pretty good player, but he didn't get a 5th-year option because of the position and everything. But it's unmistakable. The top 10 pick, you're basically a lock unless you're a nightmare to get the 5th-year option. 10 to 20, it's a coin flip or so. And then from 20 to 32, it's guys like DeAndre Baker. It's guys like, it's guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Sorry, let's like earmuffs that one. But it's hard. And I think that the one thing that you can levy at Veach was that he wasn't drafting enough, right? Like they traded for Frank Clark. They traded for Orlando Brown. They traded up for Mecole Hardman. Now, actually, if you add it all up, Mecole Hardman's actually lived up to his draft stock. If you look at historical players drafted there, but like he's been too aggressive. When he traded back into the 2020 draft and took Bo Peep Keys in the 6th round because he just couldn't resist, like that's bad. But the actual players is all random, guys. Like that's it's just hard, and player evaluation is tough. This year they made, and I want Brett Veach to be judged by this year because this is a different approach. It was let's spread the risk out and let's throw a lot of darts at the problem. And guys, Joshua Williams is starting games now, right? A 4th-round pick out of Fayetteville College, like a Division II school, right? This Jalen Watson won a game for them. It's a 7th-round pick, right? And then you go through the list, and Karlaftis has been okay. He's actually leading. I think before last week, he was leading all rookie edge players in pressures. So he hasn't been great, but he hasn't been a disaster. And then you look at last year, even like the players he picked were great. Like, so, I just think people's expectations are too high of drafting.
Yeah. And let me play this game for you real quick, because I did this on my radio show. Here is the all-time list, and it's not very long. The all-time list of Kansas City Chiefs players taken picks 24 to 32. Okay?
But all time?
All time. All time. And just tell me what jumps out at you as the stars. Gene Trosh, Greg Hill, Sid Smith, Jonathan Baldwin. Anybody remember him? Victor Riley, Larry Johnson, had the best 2 years of anybody you're gonna hear the name of. Jerome Woods, George Karlaftis, Trezell Jenkins, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Okay, it's not a good spot. Almost nobody in picks 25 to 32 gets the 5th-year option picked up. It's a spot where, and I highlighted this with Terry. He said the Chiefs have the picks to move up next year, and that's what you need to do: move up or move down, but get out of there, because what you're drafting at 27 really isn't any better than what you're going to probably draft at 47.
The guy that we just talked about, Chris Jones, is evidence of that, right? In 15, They finished 11-5. They got a pick in the middle 20s. They traded back to the 2nd round, and that was one of the better picks of the John Dorsey era. That was good, right? And again, the 5th-year option complicates things. The escalators on the contract, right? The 1st-round pick, now in the updated CBA, like a guy like Kyler Murray, like his 5th-year option, for example, was not cheap because he had Pro Bowls, right? Like there are issues associated with the draft picks in the NFL now that don't make them as cheap. But 2nd-round picks are like, if you look at any surplus value curve, the 33rd pick is like the most valuable pick in the draft because you don't have the costs. You have good production. You have 1st-round-ish production. And I agree with you, Petro. And I think, for this team, it almost always has to be the trade back thing, right? Because, this is going to be a team that you need the weak links reinforced, right? You need, it's they got in trouble cap wise and roster wise because they threw too many eggs into very few players. And I think that they're going to have to be comfortable picking in the middle of second round.
Yeah. Well, and they also drafted differently when Mahomes was on the rookie contract versus what they're doing now. I think at the time Mahomes was in that window, the championship, AFC championship window, Super Bowls, they felt like we got to win now. We got to win as much as we can. We got a shot at a dynasty. Let's take our swings. And so, if anything, they do get dinged for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That was to me was the one pick, the one draft where it felt as if that's a different player right now, they could be a dramatically different team right now. Because there are a lot of guys they could have gotten in that spot who have been productive players. And it was a luxury pick. But again, you're a young GM. You're trying to figure it out. You feel pretty good about what you have on your roster. You've won a bunch of games. You got a ring on your finger. You're going to make those kind of decisions.
You didn't even know there was going to be a season that fall. Like that, there were exactly. You just came off a Super Bowl. There were a lot of weird things that happened.
Yep.
So yeah.
By the way, there was a bit of a hubbub about the fact that I'm wearing a Yankees hoodie here tonight, and I get it. Many of our viewers are if you're catching us on the podcast, people on the stream are in Kansas City, right? This hoodie I will wear until it falls off me. One, I have many friends that are Yankee fans. Not that I'm a Yankee fan, but I bought this as a souvenir when Steven St. John and I went to the Chiefs at Jets when Brett Favre was the quarterback of the Jets. And I bought it on my way down to Steven and I taking the tour of the World Trade Center. The museum and the new building hadn't been built. And so, yes, this hoodie will stick with me.
So good Petro trip. Is really this is a low key flex for Petro being able to fit in a shirt that he bought in 2008. I see you, Petro.
Yeah. I think it's probably a lot of stretching of the shirt, really, to be honest with you, that's made it happen. So, we'll leave it at that. What do we learn? What do the 49ers game teach us? Jeff, anything that you came away and said, okay, we didn't know this about this team before we watched them play against the 49ers?
Well, it told me that they can protect their offensive line when they want to. And last week it was, let's get rid of Andrew Wiley. Let's get rid of Orlando Brown. People were talking about Eric Fisher coming back. And so I keep saying this, you can protect your offensive line if you want to. It doesn't have to always be 5 out. You can do some things. And they were creative with it, with the screen game, slipping backs out, making sure that they're chipping at the right times, moving the pocket. I think it's noteworthy, and I said this on 810 earlier today, that their 3 biggest offensive outputs have come against NFC teams. And there may be a little bit of, hey, we can pull some tricks out against these teams that the Raiders, the Chargers, the Bills, they've probably seen this too many times. We can't get away with this kind of stuff. I mean, the Jets sweep to McCole Hardman. That's like banana in the tailpipe type stuff for Andy Reid at this stage. We're still falling for this. But
how did you do the voice? Am I going to fall for the banana in the tailpipe?
Yeah. Imagine that. But
by the way, Jeff, do you think Eric even understands that reference?
It went right by him,
Sorry, I'm good at this stuff, but not that good.
Beverly Hills Cop.
Eddie Murphy.
Yeah,
go back and watch it when you got time. All that money you're making, could get the big plasma TV, whatever, big high def. Have your maid slip it in, cue it up. But no, I thought that was a very impressive game plan, and so for me, it's like, why can't that be every game when you're facing a team that's got an aggressive pass rush and a good defense? So to me, it's a bit mystifying that, and the Bucs are a different story now than they're a mess. So it's hard to make sense of what they were defensively when the Chiefs played them because they haven't been that defense since that game. But certainly the Niners, even with being banged up or a solid defense and well coached, they were able to do some things against them that let me know that they're not going to panic about the offensive line. They're just going to coach it better.
What'd you learn, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I think we learned in this that they're capable of winning a Super Bowl, right? Like if they play this way, they're beating anybody, including Buffalo. And I think, that is something I think we all knew, right? We've seen that before. But it was good to have it being reinforced. The big thing for me, as somebody who really pounded the table for the Tyreek Hill trade, the guy that said, everything's going to be okay with, Juju and Marquez, Valdez-Scantling, and, Sky Moore, McCole Hardman. That was the most fun. I texted my buddy who, works in the Chiefs front office. I go, look, I haven't had that much fun watching a Chiefs game in a long time. And it was just the things that we thought were possible for them were possible. And I do have some frustration, as Jeff just alluded to, like, why don't you do that every game? But I think, I just think it's hard to be consistently great in the league. And the Chiefs, I think, are demonstrating that.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. What are the Chiefs, right? Like 3 wins, they score 40-plus points, 2 close calls against the Chargers and Raiders. The 3 wins, by the way, all the NFC teams, but also all road games. 2 losses to the Colts and Bills. How do you describe what this team is right now, Jeff?
I think they're a work in progress in a year where a work in progress can make you great if you got the right personnel. And so I think that the reasons why we have this back and forth, or kind of like a loss leads to all kinds of epic conversations about what needs to be moved around, and a win leads to all types of coronations, is that they are trying to figure out some of these moving parts. On offense, Eric just mentioned JuJu Smith-Schuster. I said this last week. I think they're better off building this offense around 2 or 3 guys, 3 or 4 guys, the passing game at least, and not trying to make everybody feel like they're part of the equation. Yeah, okay, Justin Watson get his touchdown every 4 or 5 games. That's great for him. You don't have to scheme that up every week, or Michael Byrd or Noah Gray, whoever it is. Same thing on defense. I think that you saw the way they played this past week. You're seeing young players trying to figure out. We talked about George Karlaftis and where's he at, and these young corners playing. I just think there's a lot of things that they're learning along the way that, it doesn't make them a dominant team, but this is a year when you don't have to be dominant to be great. Not to be 2018 Chiefs going out, putting up 50 points and just rolling through people. I think if you have the right pieces, with a Mahomes, a Kelsey, a Chris Jones, and you know how to win games, that can get you a long way in the 2022 season.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I like what you said about, what we learned. And that is that there is an answer, right? With good personnel for the 49ers, there is an answer on how you can win with this offensive line. Because I think there was kind of a feeling coming out of Buffalo that, well, the line sucks and they're not going to be able to block, and it's going to take a +3 day to get by the Bills. And I don't think that's the case. I think you saw that they can scheme differently. And I love the comment about somebody should tell Andy Reid and the coaching staff they're playing the number 1 defense every week, because clearly, he seemed to be intimidated by it. Although I will say I still think the Bills are better, right, than the 49ers, than what they saw. And so you're still going to have to play better. But work in progress, Eric. Do you like that as what the Chiefs are right now?
This feels like the 2019 season where, they're kind of an afterthought. The Ravens were the team that year, and even the Patriots had gotten off to, what were they, 10-0 in that year as well. Chiefs lose a couple games, and the defense in 2019, we forget that there was a growing pain going from Bob Sutton to Steve Spagnuolo. Here there was a growing pain in going from Steve Spagnuolo's original orientation to the defense, which was, I play veterans that I trust, to I'm playing rookies all over the place. And so there's a little bit of and the whole year in 19, it felt like this team, if they hit their stride, can be really good. And I think we've seen their stride being hit a few times, and I think that is going to grip Chiefs fans in, periodically. There are also going to be games where there are stinkers. I think, like 19, though, the schedule will start out tough, right? 5-2, all 7 of their opponents this year had winning records last year. You look down the stretch, and I know you said this on your show yesterday, Petro, like the schedule doesn't look nearly as bad as it did going into the year. So I think you're going to get some games even where they don't play all that great. Like they play a Colts level game and they win. And you saw that sometimes in 19 as well, down the stretch, because their schedule was so favorable. So I feel like it is a work in progress. And I don't think that's a slander to them. If you're a Chiefs fan, you want them to be a finished product down the line. I think that's the answer to why Andy Reid doesn't call his good plays every week. I do think they are saving things for the future. And I don't know if that's a great thing to do when a 1 seed gets you a bye and no other seed gets you a bye, but I'm okay with the idea of them being a work in progress.
I'm okay with them being a work in progress, Jeff, because I think they've got time to finish the work, right? Like, and be who they want to be, whatever they can be, get towards their ceiling by the time they get to the playoffs. And I think this is something we might need to all just settle in and get used to if you're going to cover the Chiefs or root for the Chiefs, because, it's the team with the rookie contract quarterback that can keep everybody. And okay, the band's all together for 3 or 4 years. Once you leave that, you're grabbing JuJu Smith-Schuster, and if you do it right, you get him for $3 million. He hits his incentives to go to $10 million, and then somebody gives him, 4 for $75 million, and you go, "Hey, nice job, JuJu. We can't afford that, but you did a great job for us. You proved it's on down the road." And then you go find the next JuJu, right? I mean, we're going to have a conversation about signing JuJu because I've looked at the free agent wideouts that are scheduled for next year, and it's not as good a crop as was on the list for this year. So that may change their mind on JuJu, but that's part of the process. I mean, you're always going to be kind of a work in progress because you're going to have to turn the rest of the 2 to 52 or 2 to 53 is going to have to be churned more often, right? When you have that Patrick Mahomes contract.
Yeah, that's just the way it is for everybody, and I think it's tough. I mean, I think this market, this fan base is not used to that because of what happened. I think I listen to you sometimes, and I feel like there's PTSD from what happened back in the '80s and the way this team, all the '90s and the quarterback stuff. I get it. Like I grew up with the Lions. I know how it feels to go through decades of frustration.
No,
but
what you know is traumatic stress disorder. You haven't reached the post.
There's no post.
You're in the post part as Chiefs fans.
You're living through it.
That's right.
You've got TSD, traumatic stress disorder. You're still living it.
Waiting for the chopper to get to Hanoi, get me out of there. Hadn't come yet, but no, I think that is true of any team that reaches. I go to Baltimore right now. Trust me, they're having the same frustrating conversations sometimes about why has this not happened yet. We've had this roster, and Lamar is so great. And they haven't had any of what we're talking about with the Chiefs, at least not recently. And so I think it's tough for fans, especially to understand that, you're always going to be trying to find ways to fix things once your quarterback's making a lot of money. And I was talking on 810, again, Border Patrol with Stephen St. John a couple of weeks ago, and I said, if you're trying to outplay a team like Buffalo right now in the let's go get whatever we want game, you're not going to win if you're the Chiefs. The next team is always going to be able to do better. So next year it'll be the Bengals or the Chargers, whoever else who's got a rookie quarterback, a young quarterback on a rookie deal. The Jets are in that situation now. So you can't win that, but you continue winning by making sure that you are getting the most out of the guys you do have, and then figuring out what do we do with the guys who like the Orlando Browns of the world. Or the Frank Clarks, or a guy like L'Jarius Sneed's going to be in a situation. How much are you going to pay him to stick around? Are you going to break the bank for a corner? Or are you going to go get one of these new guys step in and take his spot? That's where you really are allowed to, or that's where you really have a chance to extend your window. I saw someone say, "Hey, the window's still open." Window is closed as far as the rookie contract deal. That's what I mean. Yeah, they can still contend, but having the access to go out and fix your problems immediately, those days are over.
Yeah, and I like to point out, like the Patriots, who, again, I don't want to compare them because, it's different, but it's kind of similar. The last time the Patriots won the Super Bowl in September of 2018, they lost to the Jaguars and they lost to the Detroit Lions. In 2016, they got shut out, and now Brady didn't start this game, but they got shut out by the Bills in September. In 2014, famously, right, they lost to the Kansas City Chiefs, got blown out at Arrowhead. Like, those Patriots teams were all works in progress too, because every single year they had to trade. They traded Jamie Collins to the Browns and won a Super Bowl in the same year. They traded Chandler Jones to the Arizona Cardinals and won a Super Bowl relatively close after that. Like, that's kind of how it goes here. And to Jeff's point, like, it's different, right? When it was Matt Castle, it was a little bit lower, right? And you got to build around him to even have a modicum of success. When it was Trent Green, you had to hold on for dear life that he was going to stay healthy and all of that. And then, prior to that, it was guys like Gerbach and Gannon and guys like that, you had to hope that in the biggest games, the defense would play amazing football and the offense would do just enough. And it's like, that's not the way it goes anymore. Like, it's Pat and you scaffold around Pat. And sometimes, that clay is just going to be very, very wet early in the season. And, you hope, like, I think last season, for example, like we talked about the Chiefs, that Chiefs team was a finished product in November, for better or worse. And we saw the for worse in January twice against the Bengals. I think this team is sort of much like 19 crescendoing at the right time. Now, does that mean they'll beat the Bills? No. Does that mean, to Jeff's point, they'll beat the Bengals again? No. But like, I think that this team is sort of they're in that Patriots realm where they're going to probably get there at the right time.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I just think we need to know. Fans need to understand it's going to be a work in progress every year. Right.
Yep.
That's just the way it is with that contract. Isiah Pacheco, word came out Sunday morning when I was doing the pregame show that he was going to be the starter. Right. That was a big buzz. He did start. He did carry 8 times for 43 yards, 0 targets in the passing game. Overall, the Chiefs had 18 design runs, 16 of them to the running backs. They dropped back 36 times, mind you. What is Isiah Pacheco the answer in the run game, or at least this order of usage, Jeff, or maybe a little bit more downhill? Is this the answer to the running game?
Well, I can't wait to hear your guys' answers on this, because this is the official Isiah Pacheco haters club right here. The 2 co-leaders of it, all throughout training camp, all throughout the start of the season. Why is this guy on the team? What is this guy? He can't see 3.2 yards a carry in college. Now he's the starting running back on the Chiefs. Andy Reid loves fast guys. And if you that we all know is going to get you a lot farther in his universe than anything else. I think that they decided we need to have a downhill presence against a team that is going to be physical. My guess is that they think he allows their offense to do more things with the threat of the run game. If he's not going to run the ball a lot more, at least have someone who is a threat to break tackles, to be a downhill threat. Having that in your offense may create more creativity for you. I mean, look, I hate to knock Clyde Edwards-Helaire because it's low-hanging fruit at this stage, but he's just not the running back this team needs in their offense. And so if you can get a little bit out of Pacheco, a little bit out of him in certain roles, a little bit out of McKinnon, I think it's much better than what they've been doing in the past.
Can I point out that Isiah Pacheco averaged 5.3 yards per carry? Clyde Edwards-Helaire averaged 5.3 yards per carry.
There you go.
Isiah Pacheco's long run of the day.
Boys.
Isiah Pacheco's long run of the day was 17 yards. Clyde Edwards-Helaire's long run of the day was 16 yards. I mean, I am not in a haters club of Pacheco. I don't mind him being on the team. I think Eric and I'll let Eric speak for himself, but I think we reacted to the idea that Pacheco is somehow the next. There seemed to be like Jamal Charles, right? I don't think that's coming, and I certainly haven't seen that to this point.
I mean, our friend Nate Taylor, who we all like, I wrote an article in The Athletic saying the next superstar ? When I say he was overhyped, what I'm talking about is people talking about, and like Louis Riddick.
Wait a minute. You wrote an article in The Athletic?
Nate Taylor.
Well, I know, but I thought you said like you that I wrote it, like you yourself. Nate wrote it.
Nate wrote it, and so I made a tweet the other day. And I said I think Isiah Pacheco is one of the most overhyped players in recent Chiefs history. That's what I mean. Is when people are penning articles in like respected and respected people writing respected articles saying that this is a next superstar for this team. Louis Riddick, that like honestly cost I'm happy I'm not gambling right now. Louis Riddick cost gamblers hundreds of thousands of dollars that Monday night game when he tweeted out Isiah Pacheco eyeballs, and every degenerate goes and bets every Isiah Pacheco prop on the board, and Pacheco plays one offensive snap. This is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about where I got look, he was a bad college running back when you look at yards after contact, when you look at all this stuff. But I think Andy Reid's one of the best coaches of all time. And when he says Isiah Pacheco is good, that has weight with me, right? So I respect him. Now, I actually like what I saw Sunday, because what you saw was Pacheco. Look, he didn't run to daylight that much, but he did move the pile a couple yards, like 2 or 3 times, which made 2nd and 6 turn into 2nd and 4, which I did like. And then what I think you really saw, which is crucial, Edwards-Helaire has been very good as a backup running back in this league, right? You watch the Bills playoff game where he backed up McKinnon. He had a couple of nice runs. It's sad to say this because he's a backup running back and a 32nd overall pick, but the guy's actually a decent change of pace, right? When he gets in there and he can like make the cutback and stuff. You add that to McKinnon, where I think the biggest thing you saw Sunday was they really want to lay off McKinnon until the playoffs. That is the number one thing that when you read the reports about they're going to go with Pacheco 1, Clyde 2, and McKinnon, I think that is the underlying story is when we get to January, McKinnon's going to carry the load for this team if he's still healthy, and they're going to keep him healthy by hook or by crook. And if that means starting a 7th-round pick out of Rutgers who averaged 2.1 yards a carry in college, they're going to do that.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. The combination looks pretty good, right? That's like who cares which one?
Right.
Andy Reid
who cares how you got there?
Well,
the money is spent, the draft picks are spent. These are the players you have. Find the best way to use them, and I think that's what go back to. What did we learn in this game? Maybe the Chiefs learned how to use their running backs in tandem. And I think it's a great point by Eric. That is this about they know McKinnon's the best, but break glass in case of playoffs, right? Like that's basically what you're saying. McKinnon is all right. We need everybody to carry the load so we can get there. But when you think of what are the biggest plays that have been made out of the backfield, when they had 3rd and 20 and they wanted to run it and get a first down, when they had 3rd and 20 and wanted to throw a screen and get a first down, it was Jerick McKinnon who made both of those plays. I mean,
when really, they need a real running back to make a play, they go to Jerick McKinnon. The problem is they can't go to Jerick McKinnon 20 times a game.
You don't sound so stole on McKinnon, Jeff.
I think he's overhyped. I think he's made some plays, but I'm not going to sit here and say, okay, he's the closer. Bring him in the postseason. I mean, I think he had some great runs against a bad Pittsburgh team. He was nowhere to be found in that Bengals game. I just think that it's just he's got an injury history. I think he's a solid player, but I'm not going to sit here. If I'm picking out of the 3, he ain't going to be the first one I'm taking out of that group. Put it that way.
Who are you taking?
Ronald Jones. Play.
We had a couple of people mention Chris Collinsworth talking about Pacheco on Sunday night.
Yeah.
You mentioned Louis Riddick.
Yeah.
Where do you think this is coming from? Do you think it's that Chris Collinsworth has sat and watched all the training camp footage of Isiah Pacheco or every run he's had? And I know Chris does his homework, and I'm sure he has seen it. Part of it. Do you think Louis Riddick has grinded through his entire Rutgers filmography and every snap? No. They've talked to Andy freaking Reid or Eric Bieniemy
or Pacheco's agent.
Or yes.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, Louis Riddick, where was he when he was in the league? Philadelphia.
With the Eagles, with Andy Reid. Yeah, no.
I mean, that's a hell of a head fake, though. Maybe Andy Reid owes all those sports bettors a lot of money. But, like, I'm telling you right now, I was in group chats with sports bettors who were like, fuck Louis Riddick. Like, it was like a big time, like, they were angry with him over that tweet. And, like, and that, to me, like, again, as somebody who, like, it's harmless, but there are people putting real money on these things. Like, that's where I get a little angry about expectations, because it's like, we got to stop talking about the guy like he's Gale Sayers. We got to start, and
wait a minute.
And so
you're telling me Andy's a master of hyperbole? Is that what you're telling me?
I am, but I also think
I still think Josh Gordon is on his way to the Hall of Fame the way he showed up here last year and they talked him up.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jeff brings up a really good point though. Like, where the McKinnon stuff last year came out of nowhere, right? And McKinnon, I mean, he made a really good play in Denver in Week 18, but he wasn't the lead back in that game. They were Darrell Williamsing the hell out of the middle of the season all year last year. And you get McKinnon in the playoffs, and that guy is spry. He's got juice. I do think I've been holding out because I like Rojo. I think Ronald Jones is the hammer in the playoffs too. Like I think he's going to be the hammer, and he's going to have fresh legs. And so, again, maybe we don't give Andy enough credit.
Fresh legs have to wake the guy up. He's probably been asleep all year, hibernating.
Fresh legs or stale on the shelf.
That's right.
We'll see what it ends up being when it's there. No, and I'll tell you somebody else that, who you can count on that's spreads this around. The head PR folks with an NFL team take the calls of the Jeff Chadihas of the world. And there's some guys that I can remember the PR guys walking amongst the media guys going, this is years ago, so it's nobody currently in the organization. But it really looks good. Omar Epps. Tell you what, he looks Omar freaking Epps. And maybe it's not even.
I'm thinking of Quentin Debs.
Omar Epps is an actor.
The actor, yeah.
Omar Epps was in Juice.
You're thinking of Quentin Debs.
Omar Easy.
The fullback,
running back. Wasn't that it? It was Omar Easy.
Yeah, Omar Easy was a fullback for sure.
Yeah. Okay, and Omar Epps is an actor. So I apologize to Omar Epps.
I mean, back when I was growing up in Minnesota, there was a safety who ended up having a great CFL career and ended up back in the NFL because he was so good at the CFL. His name was Kyrie Airbear, and Mike Tice's first year hyped that dude up so much that it was unbelievable. And then he got cut after training camp, and the guy had the biggest egg on his face. This is not these guys love to look at, and he was undrafted, and then the dude was getting first team reps in the first week of training camp. These teams love being able to hype up a dude that they put no draft capital in. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes if it doesn't work, you still give them reps, maybe like Pacheco.
And sometimes what it is to get their name on the street and drum up some interest so they can move them instead of just cutting them. And that's kind of what I thought was going on, with Pacheco. I will agree. Pacheco belongs in the league, right? And he does not have great vision. Neither does Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's at least fast. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is not. I think there's something to be said. I think all of these scenarios can play together and be part of their plan at running back. JuJu Smith-Schuster. Is he a number one wide receiver, Jeff? I mean, listen, I know it's just 2 games, but should we be viewing him in that light? Should the Chiefs be viewing him in that light? We had the question earlier, Orlando Brown or JuJu Smith-Schuster. Who do you re-sign at the end of this year? Where do you spend the money? Where's I heard you talking about him being heavy again today on the radio. Yeah. I didn't seem to be too heavy to go the distance either the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, he's not Eager-esque right now. That's not just me. Like I said, that's other people who do this for a living, scouting teams saying that to me. But and I say heavy, he's not walking around. I've seen him
in the locker room. He is not a fat ass.
No, but I think he's bulked up. That's what he looks like to me.
That might be.
But no, he certainly played well the last couple of years. And if you're getting the JuJu Smith-Schuster, who was a couple of years ago, a guy who was looking for a big deal in free agency and had some pretty good numbers, I think, you definitely sign him. He's never been a number one receiver in this league. I mean, that's the first thing I will say. I mean, he's a good receiver. He's the quintessential number 2 guy. That's why the thing in Pittsburgh went south once Antonio Brown was gone, because he needs to have that guy to play off of to really be productive. But I think they figured out how best to use him in this offense, which to me is, again, part of the work in progress dynamic that I was discussing earlier. I think that they're probably running better routes for him. He's getting on a more consistent page with Mahomes, and he's creating more big plays because of it. I'd be very reticent, though, to sign a player who's had his injury history, who's got this knee issue that was scaring people off, to any kind of big deal. I just feel like what he does for you is really good, but I think you can find that from other people too. He's not so special that you have to break the bank to hold on to a guy like that.
Where are you sitting on JuJu right now, Eric?
I think he's been great. I think, he and Valdez-Scantling are playing the roles that we thought they would, and extremely well. Especially, you think about JuJu against the Bills, Marquez against the Raiders, and then both of them this last week. I think when they signed JuJu, when they signed Valdez-Scantling, there was a little bit of a concern about the mismatch in the contracts, right? Marquez got the 2/3 year deal. JuJu had the 1 year deal, even though I think JuJu's a better player, a better all-around player. I think where it's heading is that he's probably going to leave, just because of what they're going to have to pay him is above and beyond, I think, what they're going to be willing to. But that's going to be, I mean, look, if they can get a 4th-round comp pick for him, like that's a pretty solid 1-year investment. And I think what this year is about, by the way, like I think this year is about Mahomes testing his limits, right? You trade Tyreek. They've never, I mean, they had games without Tyreek, but they've never had extended periods of time without Tyreek. Like this was the year where they test and say, can we win with guys like Valdez-Scantling, guys like JuJu, guys like Sky Moore, Justin Watson, and McCole Hardman? And, you know, I think what they're going to probably do is sign the lesser of the guy with Hardman or JuJu and just get a deal there. And they might not even have to replace him necessarily if Sky Moore, you know, grows into who he is, you know, it's projected to be and stuff like that. So I would say no. And this isn't to say he doesn't deserve it. He deserves it. But the mark of great dynasty level teams is not necessarily giving players who deserve contracts the contracts.
Let me point this out. Tyreek Hill through 7 games last year had 52 catches for 641 yards and 5 touchdowns. He was averaging 12.3 yards per catch. Through 7 games this year, JuJu, 34 catches. So again, 52 for Tyreek, 34 for JuJu. 641 for Tyreek, 494 for JuJu. 12.3 yards per catch, 14.5.
Yeah. Now add DeMarcus Robinson's numbers to that.
Wait a minute, I will.
Combine JuJu and MVS. Yeah.
I've got them all. 5 touchdowns for Tyreek Hill, 2 for JuJu Smith-Schuster. Is Tyreek Hill better? Yes, he's better. But your investment is $3 to $10 million tops, and $10 million only gets there if you get to the AFC Championship game and he plays 50% of the snaps, and then get to the Super Bowl and win it, and he plays 50% of the snaps. That's the last $2 million of his incentives. So in all likelihood, it's probably $3 to $8 million your investment versus the $100+ million for Tyreek Hill. And to your point, the wide receivers, top 4 wideouts as a whole last year. So we're talking about Tyreek Hill, McCole Hardman, Byron Pringle, DeMarcus Robinson. At this point, 110 catches for 1,300 yards, 12 yards a catch, 10 touchdowns. This year, 81 catches for 1,181, so 1,200. So roughly about 100 yards less on about 30 less catches. Their yards per catch is 14.6. It's up significantly off what it was last year. It's 5 touchdowns. Kelsey last year was 45 for 533 and 4. This year he's 47 for 553 and 7. So he's making up some of
this Chiefs team, by the way, the Chiefs played all close games last year except for the Titans game. They were like, the Chiefs have been able to lay off the gas pedal against Arizona, against Tampa Bay, and against San Francisco. So their passing numbers, volume-wise, are going to be less than last year because last year they were either trailing in some games or playing, you know, playing games close, like the Browns game and the Eagles game and the Washington Commanders game. And so I actually think, and you look at this team as number 1 in expected points added on offense, number 1 with the pass. Like right now, they passed the test with these guys. And I think, like, what's the number? It was all the way back to Sylvester Morris and Derek Alexander for the 2 wideouts with 100 yards. Like, when's the last time they've had 2 wideouts that had 1,000? Because MBS is on pace for 900 or so. Like, they could clearly get there. And this, I mean, if they get 1,000 yards out of both of those guys, this will be an unmitigated success, right? I mean, that.
I think what you got to figure out when it comes to JuJu, even Mark MBS, is how much of that is scheming guys open and how much is a guy's ability getting them open. It feels like JuJu the last couple of games has been scheming him open, and that can change the more stuff's on film. So that's what I'm saying. You got to take a long look at this over the course of a year to see if he's doing this every week. Because Tyreek, you knew he was getting open. He was getting open. Didn't matter what you were doing, what play you were calling.
And let me say this: the Chiefs, to Eric's point, they were 3-4 last year. They were playing catch up. Anyone who's had a fantasy team, what do you love? A quarterback that's going to put it in the air that's usually losing, because they'll really put it in the air and you'll really pile up yards when you're chasing a score. And that's what the Chiefs were. Here's Mahomes' numbers. Last year, 67.5% completion. This year, 66.9. Last year, 2,093 yards. This year, 2,159. More yards. And again, at a time that he's winning more games and winning some of them comfortably, he still put up better yards. Touchdowns last year, 18. Interceptions, 9. We know many of those were Tyreek Hill's fault. Frankly, they were going off his hands and into defenders. This year, 20-5. Passer rating last year, 98. This year, 110. and you're right, Jeff, whether they're scheming or whatever. And to Eric's point about this is about Patrick Mahomes finding himself and proving to himself and to this organization that he can do it without having the best wide receiver on the field. This is his Tom Brady moment. They had to change out for cheaper parts to make it all fit and to make his contract fit, and he's the same guy or better, right? That's the real story here.
Yeah.
But
I would say, remember this, though. Tom Brady in the 2006 AFC Championship game was throwing passes to Rasheed Caldwell, and he threw one into that game that could have won it, and he went right through his hands. So you start playing that game too much, it may not affect you now. You get in the postseason.
Yeah, I remember him cussing out Aaron Dobson on a Thursday night game against the Jets in 13. Like it's ebbed and flowed with Brady, but I think that the big thing is going to be can the Chiefs avoid what the Packers did this year, which is to go so far away from God's light at the wide receiver position that your quarterback is going on podcasts and being like, we need to bench the guys that are not executing. Like, to the Chiefs' credit, they went out and they spread the risk out. Like, McCole Hardman was injured for the first part of the season. He looks great now, right? Like he's not only doing the jet sweepy stuff. That catch he made on the throw that was behind him on that out route to extend the drive when they were down 10-0 was an incredibly good catch and a good one for him. We haven't seen the best out of Sky Moore. Justin Watson caught a big touchdown against the Chargers, and those are the three depth guys. And JuJu and MBS, like they've had various, like JuJu struggled early, MBS struggled early. It's good on the Chiefs for also giving Pat nothing, right? The way that the Packers have given. I mean, Sammy Watkins is getting reps for the Packers right now. Like we give the Chiefs a little bit of credit for not giving Pat nothing.
Yeah, Eric just said we haven't seen the best out of Sky Moore is best synonymous with anything.
Sky Moore had a good career on the MAC. I think Sky Moore will be something for this team. I know Soren thinks
I'm joking. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I haven't given up on Sky Moore.
He's a privilege on the punt return, though, for sure.
I've given up on him on the punts, and I've given up on the punt returns. Yes, I'm there. Listen, I want to be clear. I'm not saying don't spend any money on receivers, don't get them. If you can get Tyreek Hill, get him. But what I think this does is it empowers Patrick Mahomes to believe in himself that he doesn't have to have the best weapons around. It empowers the organization to walk away from bad deals. Like, listen, we've talked about it a lot. I talked to people when Trent Williams was available from the football team, right? And he went for a third and a fifth, right? A third and a fifth to the 49ers. Then he got the free agency and he cost a fortune. I know we had somebody in there talking about how did the Chiefs bow out? Yes, the Chiefs bowed out. They said that's enough. That's as far as we're going to go. Then they turned to plan B, which was trading for Orlando Brown. They were hot to try it on Trent Williams because they didn't like anything in the draft. But they made a mistake. They missed on Trent Williams. Everybody missed on Trent Williams when the football team, except for the 49ers, when the football team made him available when he was having his contract squabble, and the 49ers got him, and it was a tremendous acquisition for him. But the Chiefs said, all right, we're not going to go there. That's too much. And I think where teams get into problems is when they say, we have to have. Yeah. The only thing you have to have is the quarterback. Yeah. And hopefully you have a quarterback who doesn't say, I have to have, right? I need every shiny object out there. Yeah. And I think that's what this year has done is Patrick Mahomes, they got to sign off on saying, okay, Tyreek Hill can go. Then they delivered a much better answer than what the Packers delivered to Aaron Rodgers. And so I think Patrick Mahomes can have confidence that they can put quality receivers around him. And they're a more productive offense this year than they were last year. They're the highest scoring offense in football by 2.5 points right now.
Yeah, but they still got Kelsey. That's what changes the conversation. If Aaron Rodgers had a Travis Kelsey, it'd be a different story. Every quarterback needs one guy. I mean, you don't need like three of them. But you better have one guy you trust, who you know is hard to deal with.
Let's set this here. If Travis Kelsey leaves and they get a quality tight end that's JuJu caliber to Tyreek Hill and the thing keeps chugging along, then what do we say? Because everybody used to say, well, yeah, he's great, but he's got Tyreek and Kelsey.
Well, I mean, Brady won a Super Bowl with Martellus Bennett taking over for Gronk. Like that was the whole like, I'm heat checking here from 30 feet, right? Like that. Yeah. That was the one thing. And Brady has always been better with Gronk. And I think it's going to take an adjustment once Travis retires or something. But Jeff's right about that in that sense. And one of the big things, we didn't talk about this, one of the really key parts of Sunday's game was Patrick trusted the offense. There were a lot of 3-step throw the ball to Travis, as we've advocated for on the show, and those plays got the Chiefs ahead of schedule when they early on needed to, when they were down 10-0. And so there does need to be a replacement there. It does look like they're trying to, Noah Gray and Jody Fortson, they're trying to build that up in some younger player. They've never really been able to do that.
No, I agree. All right, trade deadline will have come and gone by the next time we do the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Do the Chiefs need to make a trade, Jeff?
No. And that's because I don't think that they can make a deal for what can help them right now that would be productive. I think the place they're at right now, you're good enough to win a championship. Again, I like Buffalo in the AFC, but I would not surprise me if the Chiefs beat them and wound up winning a championship with this current makeup. And you don't want to get into this this mindset of, if we just get one more guy, it's going to make the biggest difference in the world. They got a great deal with Melvin Ingram coming in here at the end of last year. I mean, the second half of last season. But they were so desperate for pass rush. We forget that part of it. They were doing nothing defensively when he showed up. And so that I understand where we have to do something just to be able to compete. They're not at a place right now, even with their pass rush not being ideal, but it's serviceable. It shows up in certain games. It can be dominant in certain games. I don't think all this Odell buzz, it's never made any sense to me. I don't know how we got to the point where we forgot this guy, tore his ACL in mid-February, didn't have surgery until March, and people think he's just going to walk onto a field in 4 or 5 teams and just change the whole complexion of the league. It just makes no sense to me.
And he hasn't been good for 5. He hasn't been in 5 years.
On top of that, yeah, he hadn't even been a difference maker. He had a great Super Bowl before he tore his knee up, but and you just can't. If you're looking to make a deal at the trade deadline, you need to bring in somebody who's playing a position that can immediately help you on the field, like Christian McCaffrey did with the Niners. You saw that, a pass rusher, a corner, even a receiver could do that for you, but they don't need that. Offensive tackle ain't happening. And so at this point, I just think if those spots aren't available, it ain't happening. It shouldn't happen for you.
All right, Eric.
I know your answer, Petro, so I'm not gonna go that. I don't think so. Somebody asked about Brian Burns. Brian Burns is a wonderful football player who would be a tremendous Chief. But I've heard, quote, he is not getting traded by a few sources, which is exactly what they said when they said, he can be had for 2 first-round picks. I don't, Carolina, some free advice, by the way. Don't tear it all down like the Bears, right? If you have good players, sign a few of them. So when you actually hit on a quarterback, it's not going to be what Chicago has to go through. So I don't think so. I mean, I agree with Jeff. I think, they're not desperate for anything. And again, they did everything this offseason to not have to be desperate for anything this time of year. They have depth. They have, even at the offensive line, they have depth. They have players they drafted. They have Prince Tegawagu. They have, Darian Kennard, who I know, Petro thinks sucks, but they have players who are there to develop and play if they have to. It's not like last year where they roll the ball out. No one's rushing the passer.
I don't know where you can make the statements you make about Pacheco and then have anything.
One player was good in the SEC, and another player was kind of asked for in the Atlantic division of the Big Ten.
Sam McDowell did point out to me, if you earlier years at Rutgers, he averaged 4.7 yards. He averaged better. Listen, I'm just going to tell you, Darian Kennard was a train wreck the time I saw him in training camp. It was awful. All right, so maybe he'll be a star. I've had people kind of whisper that maybe he's, trying to gut it through an injury. Okay, get surgery because you're not getting on the field this year. I don't know what that point is about, but I'll wait and see.
They don't have depth. They don't have players like Nick Allegretti's not a player. He's a backup. They don't like Prince Tegawagu.
We're talking about Kennard. Kennard blows. What? That's all I'm talking
I'm just
about.
describing the fact that they literally have players on the roster that have some draft capital attached to them that are probably not a complete nightmare.
If Kennard ever pisses a drop in the National Football League, I will let you out of one of the 2 steak dinners you owe me already.
I do. I can't wait to eat steak dinner. Honestly, I'm like excited for that right now.
I will say this: Laramie Tunsil is where you were thinking I was going. Yes, if Laramie Tunsil's available, I will go for it. Just as I said, go get Trent Williams. And if they'd moved a 3rd and a 5th round pick for Trent Williams back then, they'd be a lot better off, because I don't give a crap who you think you have. If there's a left tackle that's better, get them. Get them. It's one of those premium positions. You don't let it go. So, yeah, but I'm not. But again, I think the Trent Williams thing was played the second time when he was a free agent, was played correctly by the Chiefs. We're in it. That's too much. We've reached our limit. We're out. And so if they want the whole world for Laramie Tunsil, no, you stand pat, right? But I think you do have to, can we all agree on this, and then we'll close? You have to have your head on a swivel and be listening. And if there's an opportunity, you take it. Like I said, Trent Williams was an opportunity, and they sat there and said, we got Eric Fisher and we got Mitchell Schwartz. The opportunity was there. Figure it out. 5 best guys you can get. You can figure out where to put them all. And the one that I love is, I mean, you've said it, Jeff, the ego of Orlando Brown.
Yeah.
Whoa, what would we do? Cut his ass. Like, worst case scenario, cut his ass. You can play right tackle and grumble, or you can go sit and watch from afar.
What's he going to do? Block somebody?
Exactly. All right, that's going to do it for us. Again, we apologize. It looks like Facebook got up and running, but that wasn't us. That was on Facebook. You can, if you're catching us on the podcast, we stream live on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. You can be part of the chat in Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. Hit those likes, those love buttons. Make sure you subscribe. Does good things for us. We would really appreciate it if you would, and it don't cost you nothing. So I will be back at it tomorrow night with our 2 Deep, Wednesday nights, 9 p.m. talking NFL. So for Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com, Eric Eager, Sumer Sports. Catch his work at SumerSports.com. My name is Soren Petro. You can catch my show at 810WHB.com. Thank you very much for joining us here on Red Gold.